Hi, thank you for joining today's video. My name is Katrina. My YouTube channel, my Instagram, also my eBay store are all under Mid-Century Cat, and I'm happy to have you with us today. Today we're going to talk just a little bit about how I began selling vintage postcards. I'm going to talk to you about a few high dollar postcards that you need to look out for, some BOLOS, and I'm going to show you at the end a little segment on how I ship postcards to protect them the best. So I actually got started selling vintage postcards kind of randomly. I did not plan to be an eBay seller at all. I'm a lover of all things vintage, and I was shopping in a little tiny hole-in-the-wall store in Caney, Kansas, which is a tiny spot on a map, and found in this little junk store a box of vintage postcards. It was a shoebox, and they were all sorts of postcards. Most of them did not have sleeves. Some of them were what I later learned were real photo postcards, but they were all pretty old. I pulled a few out. I was reading them. They were interesting. I decided to buy the box just to have the experience of reading these cards. They were interesting to me, and I thought maybe I could come up with a craft project for them. So I took them home. I began reading them. I loved it. Paid $20 for this box, small shoebox size. And as I was reading through, I thought maybe I could find some more cool postcards. Maybe I could find another shoebox of them. So I turned to the place where everyone turns to when they're looking for stuff, for used stuff or vintage stuff. I turned to eBay. As I was searching on eBay for a box of vintage postcards, I started seeing how much postcards are selling for, and that they sold for sometimes ridiculous amounts of money. And I was just in shock to think that something that was so small and seemingly insignificant could actually bring about money. So I thought maybe I could try to sell these. I don't know. At this point in my life, I didn't even know that eBay had private sellers. I thought eBay was a company. I thought Amazon was a company. I didn't realize that people sold on those platforms. So I started doing a little research into like where I could sell this, how I could sell it, and I came across some YouTube videos talking about vintage postcards. So I began educating myself, reading articles, watching videos on how to identify them, how to list them, how to ship them, and that sort of thing. When I decided that I was going to try to sell some of these cards, I had learned that the real photo postcards were the best ones to try to sell. So I went ahead and began listing a few of the real photo postcards that I had. I priced them a little bit high because I really didn't know what I was doing, and I wanted to be able to bring my price down. I thought I can always bring it down, but I can't take it up. So I did price them a little bit high. And within just about a week of listing, I had a postcard that sold for $18, and I was just completely blown away. I charged shipping, so it was $18 plus shipping. So even with the eBay fees and PayPal fees at that time, even with those fees, I almost paid for my entire box of postcards from selling this one postcard, which was super exciting to me. I was very thrilled. And I apologize for the clicking noise in the background. I have an old-fashioned time clock as my timekeeper in here, and it makes a click every minute. I'm sorry about that. So I shipped that, and that was the start of a beautiful thing. I now have over 1,500 items listed for sale on eBay. I add things all the time. I have branched out from postcards, but I would say probably 40% of my store still would be vintage postcards. They are easy to ship. They're easy to photograph. They're easy to list. I just love them. I can't say enough good about them. I love selling them. They're probably my favorite thing to sell. But I do have other items now. Garage sale finds, random items, mostly vintage, a lot of mid-century. My favorite items to sell are mid-century. Also, that is what I collect personally. So I do like some of the glassware, especially. I really love the barware from the mid-century, and so I collect those sorts of things, and then I sell those as well. So moving on, let's look at some terms that will be helpful for you to know if you want to sell vintage postcards. And I'm going to give you, in addition to these terms, I'm going to show you some photographs of my own postcards that I have listed, or that I have maybe not listed yet, but I'll give you some examples of these different terms. So the first term to know is chrome. A chrome postcard is any postcard that's after like 1939, 1940, and it has a shiny surface. So if you see like the modern postcards today with a shiny surface, those are all considered chromes. There are some chromes that do very well. I don't do a lot with chromes because I don't know them as well as I do the older ones. There are some chromes that do very well. So chrome, that's your first word to know. Secondly, you want to look out for die cuts. A die cut card is when the postcard is cut into a shape rather than just a rectangle or a square. So maybe it has Santa Claus and it's cut into the shape of Santa Claus, or maybe it has a Christmas tree and it's cut into the shape of the Christmas tree. That's important to know the word die cut, and you want to include that in your listing. A divided back card is a term that you need to know as well. A divided back card simply has a center line on the back. So as this postcard here, it has a center line on the back. This is a divided back card. An embossed card is where there's a raised design on the face of the card. So something in the design is raised. Maybe a flower is sort of puffed up, or maybe there's some other embellishment. That would be an embossed card when the paper itself is raised up. A linen card. Linen cards are very common. They are something that you will see quite often. Linen cards, they're from the late 20s all the way through the 50s. They look like linen just a little bit, and I don't know if you can see the texture on this card, if you can kind of see that. You can see that it looks a little bit like linen fabric, and those cards are called linen cards. They are often also white border cards, which is the white border around the card. Another type of card that you want to look out for or be aware of, these are old cards, and that's when on the back of a card, instead of saying postcard, it actually says private mailing card. A private mailing card, those were only made from 1898 to 1901, and I will insert a picture of an example of one of those for you. So those are very old cards. A real photo postcard, that is what my first sale was. A real photo postcard is a photo, actually, and you can see this postcard here. This is a photo, and you can see it's kind of a little shiny. It has a little bit of like cracking on the surface. This is a scent postcard. A lot of times real photo postcards will have wording in the bottom. So real photo postcard is an actual photo that has a postcard back. So it was printed that way. A lot of times real photo postcards are one-offs. So they didn't mass produce these. So with a real photo postcard, you're going to get something that is often unique. There are some that are, they might have produced small quantities of them, but often real photo postcards are unique and therefore they're very desirable. One last term I'm going to talk about today is a Victorian trade card. Often Victorian trade cards are a little bit smaller than postcards. Not always, but often. They were advertising cards before 1900. So these postcards are over 121 years old, and they will often be advertisement for a company, for a shoe company perhaps, or a stove company. Those are very common to find. So that's called a Victorian trade card. I am going to talk about a few high dollar cards and some BOLOS to look out for. The first highest dollar card that I found on the recent sold list on eBay was a real photo postcard. This was made by Charlie Gibbons, and it was a set of 3 cards actually of his wife. She was a tattooed lady, and this set sold for $2,250 on March 15th of 2021. Their story was kind of interesting. They married, and after they had been married for several years, they decided that they would make more money, make a better living if she was a tattooed lady and performed. She performed in circus sideshows, one-off performances as well, privately. And so Charles was a tattoo artist, and her name was Artoria. So Charles tattooed Artoria all over with full color tattoos, and which, in the early 1900s, that was pretty rare. She was born in 1893, so that gives you an indication of her age. Charles tattooed Artoria all over with religious scenes, with patriotic scenes, angels, tattooed her body completely, and she had a career of over 50 years working as a performer in essentially like a freak show, or being a tattooed lady in a sideshow for a circus. So the BOLO for this is to look for early tattoo images. They sell very well because they were not common. So any kind of very early tattoo images are going to be selling well. Anything that is considered kind of a circus sideshow, if you find those images, early images, especially as a real photo postcard, those will sell very well as well. Another thing that sells very well with postcards are if you have lots of assorted cards. So you may have lots that have real photo postcards, linens, chromes, all mixed together, and sometimes those lots can do very well. $300 to $700. Some of them, if they have some high quality real photo postcards in there, can sell for $1,500 to $2,500 for a lot of 1,000 to 2,000 postcards. Another thing that sells very well across the board, not only with postcards, but across the board, vintage Christmas sells well. Especially with postcards, you want to look for vintage Santa images, the vintage Santa Claus, old world Santas that are wearing purple or brown. They're wearing some color other than the traditional red. Those are going to be selling the best. Those will commonly bring $50 to $100. It's very common for a single card to bring that kind of money with an old world Santa and Christmas scene in something other than red. The red ones sell as well, but the ones in other colors are more collectible. So be on the lookout for old world Santa cards. Another thing that sells really well are called HTL cards, or hold to the light cards, and I will insert some examples here. Those are cards that have some sort of design either punched out with die cut, or they have a design sort of colored underneath a blank space in the picture, and when you hold those to the light, you can see another image or a design that shines through, and those do very well as well, especially Christmas ones. And a lot of these seem to come from Germany, so if you find cards that have some holes in them, you want to make sure to hold them up to the light and see what they look like underneath. Those are very good cards, and they are called hold to the light, or HTL. There are many more terms, and I can't go into all of them right now, but there are many things to look out for with old postcards. It's a great genre to sell in, so I encourage you to explore it some. I'm going to give you a little look today at how I ship vintage postcards, so I will do that now. So I have this postcard that is going out today. This is an old postcard from 1907. Interesting card. The way that I ship these cards, I always have them in a clear sleeve, and I buy those sleeves by the thousands usually. You can buy a pack of 100, or you can buy packs of 1,000. They just come like this. You can find them on Amazon or eBay, either one. And then I take typically the flap of a Walmart box, and I will show you the ones I get here, the green ones, which are 12 by 12 by 14, I believe. Usually take this flap. I score it in two places to make it easy to fold. I put the card within it, fold it over, tape it just to hold it down, and then I take a small poly mailer and I put it in a poly mailer for moisture protection. You want to make sure with cards that you always have them moisture protected. So I put it in a poly mailer and then put an extra piece of tape on that sticky part just to make sure that it is well closed. That's it. Just that easy. That's how I ship vintage postcards.